Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Now, here are a few signs that you might just be too masculine. You accomplish very much and feel joy very little. You give a lot, but have trouble receiving. You deify logic and vilify emotion. You worship data and scoff at intuition. You have plenty of sex, but very little intimacy. You live from the head while disconnected from your heart. Now, it's actually quite confronting to realize how easily these examples flowed from me because all of them are realities of my not too distant past. I know what it's like to goal set, to goal crush, and then paradoxically feel a chronic state of discontent, of fatigue, and this absence of aliveness in my life. It was only when I started to delve into the spiritual understandings of the masculine and feminine energies did my world start to become more enjoyable, colorful, and vibrant. Masculine and feminine energies exist on a spectrum, and no matter how you identify, we all have the ability to access and experience the range of these energies if we allow them. So if you desire to experience more joy, intimacy, passion, creativity, and love in your life, it's important to understand how to cultivate more feminine energy in your life. If you desire to be a better leader in the workplace, at home, and in the bedroom, believe me, it will behoove you to master your understanding of the masculine and feminine energies. So today, we are having a beginner guide discussion to understanding the masculine and feminine energies with our special guest, Keisha Delva. So who is Keisha Delva? Keisha is a licensed mental health therapist and the founder of Keisha Delva Creative. She runs a business helping women entrepreneurs, specifically creatives and healers, kind of like coaches and therapists, build a profitable business that they love. Many of the women who come to her are stuck in one of the two extremes. Number one, women who are in their extreme masculine. They're overworked, they're overcommitted, overwhelmed, and burnt out. Keisha once burned her own self out as a therapist and realized she needed to get her masculine and feminine energies into balance if she was ever going to live a happy, healthy, and thriving life that she enjoyed. The other group of women that come to her are the extreme, unconscious feminine, characterized by indecisiveness, difficulty following through, paralyzed or sabotaged by emotions. Keisha helps her clients cultivate strength and choice in leveraging the masculine and feminine energies to build and operate successful businesses. And one of the things that Brian and I have loved to do since the very beginning of launching this podcast is bring on leaders, women leaders of other communities of women who can share with us insights into having worked with groups of women that we can learn to become better male advocates, better male allies, better leaders of women in the workplace, better followers of women in the workplace, better leaders at home in our romantic relationships. And this is just a continuation of that trend that we've started very early on. So in this episode, Keisha will give you an introduction to what the masculine and feminine energies are and why you should care. She walks you through a set of key characteristics of masculine energy, as well as the key characteristics of feminine energy, so you can get a very clear understanding of which one belongs where and how it shows up in your everyday life and your interactions with people. She'll give you some practical applications on how to leverage these energies to show up as a more trustworthy leader in your workplace and romantic relationships. She'll share with you some reasons why your feminine partner will resist your leadership and how you can help guide her from resistance to enthusiastic consent. And then finally, we'll unveil the number one source of most, if not all, feminine complaints. Enjoy today's episode, A Beginner's Guide to Masculine and Feminine Energies, featuring Keisha Delva. So it seems like all three of us, our bladders are emptied now. We all took like a communal bathroom break. Keisha?
Full alignment.
Full alignment. That's the perfect way to welcome you to the Great Man Within podcast. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much. And yourself?
Great. You know, one of the things that I announced on the show a few months ago, and I haven't really made a lot of progress on this, is that I am going to be going and getting a dog at some point. Like I made this decision to get a dog. I'm like following all the Instagram accounts. I'm like stalking everyone else's dog accounts. Like I'm planning on making this happen. It just I haven't made a lot of progress on it yet. But I remember reading your story about how you found love. And I thought it was a really cool story. So why don't you just quickly share how a dog brought the love of your life into your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time I was living in Florida and I had flown up to Baltimore, Maryland because I was in a play. And then one night after one of our performances, me and my castmates were standing outside of the theater on the sidewalk. And this Bernese mountain dog puppy runs up to me, runs around me. So like wraps me up in the leash and I hear my now fiance's voice saying, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. He's just a puppy. He doesn't know any better." And then I turn around and I see my now fiance and I was just like smitten right away.
Wow.
And
a 2-for-1.
I got a 2-for-1. And that's not all. So we started talking, standing on the sidewalk, and we actually ended up going our separate ways. And then I ran into them again the next night in a different area.
Whoa, I didn't know that part of the story. So he didn't get the number at that point.
He didn't get the number at that point. Because God was like, okay, he screwed that up and didn't get your number. So let's do that again.
Yeah. The universe is like, nope. Keisha, I gotta say, I like how you put it on him though. You're like, he didn't get the number.
He didn't get the number. And I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it.
I love this because like animals are like little angels, and this dog literally came up and wrapped itself around you. And it was like, hey buddy, to the owner, to your fiance, and to you, it's like, this is happening. This is going to happen. And you also mentioned that the dog only lived for a couple of years, right? So like his mission on earth was, I suppose, to bring the two of you together.
I know. He only lived to be 2 years old. Yeah. We call him our little angel because he brought us together.
This is both the happiest and saddest beginning to any podcast we've ever recorded.
I know. It's like happy tears, sad tears.
Brian needs to be consoled. If you guys could see his face right now, he's hurting.
Yeah. If we could hit pause and take a quick break, that'd be preferred.
Well, Keisha, we're so excited to have you on the show because for some time now, we've wanted to introduce these concepts of masculine energy and feminine energy to our men, to learn how to be more powerful in our masculine stance. We all have masculine energies and feminine energies. It is a spectrum. So today we're going to really delineate what that means, how it can be practically used inside of our leadership styles in business, in our romantic relationships, etc. But I think the best place to start is really to kind of introduce you to our audience and share with them who it is that you are, the work that you do with women in the work that you do. Because one of the most successful things that we found on our show is bringing on women who are leaders of other women to come and talk to our guys about what we can be doing more effectively, what women want, what women are looking for in the workplace, in life, in the bedroom, in romance. And so we thought this would be a great way for us to unpack some of the wisdom that you've accumulated in your work so far.
Absolutely. So just to give you a little bit of my background, I am a licensed mental health therapist. So I was in the mental health field for quite some time. And then I found myself growing increasingly dissatisfied and unfulfilled in my work. I hit clinical burnout as a therapist, and clinical burnout just basically felt like numbness. At one point, I was depressed. I had panic attacks. I had insomnia. Like the thought of going to work felt like complete dread. And it was at that point that I realized, okay, there's clearly something off here. And I, as a therapist, started seeing my own therapist to kind of help me process what was happening and help me to figure it out. And I just realized like I wasn't fulfilled in my work anymore because I just felt like I had a bigger purpose that wasn't being met. So I ended up going on a 2-week trip to Guatemala, actually, because we like to travel and find ourselves and that kind of thing. And being there, it was just, I was deeply immersed in nature and a different culture. And it just reminded me of the beauty of life and that there's so much more to life than what I had been focusing on, which was work, 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 right? I got back from that trip from Guatemala, and the day I came back to work, I put in my 2-week notice, actually. And I had zero plans. Like, coaching wasn't even a thing that I was thinking of. I just knew I couldn't be there anymore. I kind of just gave myself the space to try different things. So I started doing different things and experimenting to try to find what my true passion or purpose was. And then one day, like, a light bulb went off and I was like, because I was thinking, how can I use my skills in a different way, right? So I was like, what if I were to just become a coach? Like, what would that be like? And then within 2 weeks, I had started my coaching business. I put my website up and all of that. So who I work with women who are either aspiring entrepreneurs. So I help them begin their online service-based business. So I work with soulpreneurs. So women who have like a spiritual foundation. They're conscious. They want to make the world a better place in some way, shape, or form through their business. So I work with a lot of healers. I work with a lot of people who aren't necessarily healers, but they still want to do great work in the world through their business. So like if they're like a marketing coach, for example, they're a marketing coach for light workers. So like that kind of thing. So either they're aspiring to start a business or they already have a business. And usually they come to me for one of a couple of different reasons. They want to learn how to express themselves more authentically in business. They want to learn how to get paid for being themselves, not feel like they have to put on a front or have this like super professional image of this is my business, just feeling more natural in their business. They come to me because they want to learn how to be more productive. So we're going to be getting into the masculine versus feminine energy thing, but usually they come to me because they're too far into the feminine energy and they're not doing enough of the masculine structure things in their business, or they're too heavy in the masculine energy and there's no room for like play or fun or spontaneity. And so they're starting to get burned out and they're feeling unfulfilled. So I work with women to essentially help them to harmonize that masculine and feminine energy within so that they can experience holistic success.
That is so good. And there's so many similarities between who you work with and from the female perspective and who Brian and I serve from the male perspective, right? Most of the men that we work with have achieved some level of success, who are asking deeper questions because they're starting to feel restless in the life they've created for themselves. They're starting to feel like there's more potential, but don't necessarily know how to get at it. There's maybe a dimming of the fire that once was burning really hot. And it's kind of like, where do I find that next level? How do I reconnect to the thing that lit me up so much inside before? So this is great. There's so many parallels there.
Keisha, one of the words I heard you say when you describe the people you work with is healer. Mm-hmm. What is a healer exactly? Yeah.
So a healer, if I had to sum it up, is basically someone who either they can be like a physical healer in the sense of like a massage therapist uses physical touch to help us heal. Or they can be like an energy healer doing things like Reiki and energy healing and that kind of a thing. But essentially, a healer is someone who promotes wellness in others.
Got it. Okay. Super helpful. I wasn't sure if we were talking doctors and you had a really specific niche or healers more broadly.
No, it's more broad, essentially, like, and it could be a doctor, right? It's just someone who wants to promote wellness in other humans, whether that's mental wellness, physical wellness, energetic wellness. Those are the people who typically come to me.
A therapist, like you're talking about, right? Like, aren't those
yes.
healers too? Yeah.
Therapists are healers as well. Absolutely. And I have clients that are therapists just like me. So
cool. Great. I think we're going to be able to unpack some more of your stories about the women that you work with and serve. Mm-hmm. As we get into this conversation around masculine and feminine energies and what is it, right? I suppose if you were speaking to a group of men who have never heard of these concepts of masculine and feminine energies or have heard the concepts but don't have even like a working definition of what that means, how would you introduce someone to the masculine and feminine energies and what's important for them to know about it?
Sure. So when we talk about masculine and feminine, these terms have ancient roots in spirituality. And the simplest way that I can describe it is if you think about nature, the reason why nature works so perfectly is that there's always a certain balance happening at all times, right? So we have hot and we have cold. We have wet and we have dry. We have light and we have dark, right? So we need those two halves to come together to form the complete whole. And the masculine and feminine energies are exactly the same. So masculine is kind of like what you would anticipate. When we think about masculine, we think about maybe like logic, structure, taking action, being the provider, doing that kind of thing. When we think about the feminine, it's more of like a passive energy. Feminine energy is more about leaning towards your intuition as opposed to your logic. Feminine energy is about being more receptive as opposed to worrying about giving and providing. Feminine energy is more passive as opposed to taking action. Feminine energy is more spontaneous, whereas masculine energy tends to be more structured. And so we can see if we're too heavy in either energy, it's going to be very difficult for us to get things done. And we're also not going to feel completely fulfilled. We're going to feel like something's kind of off. So having those two components work together is essentially what we're looking for in terms of feeling good about how we're showing up in the world and just feeling good internally. How we feel internally affects every aspect of life.
When you describe it that way, it reminds me of how somebody described left brain, right brain, like logical, creative. Is there any connection there?
I haven't heard that there's necessarily a direct connection there, but I do think that's a very good way of looking at it because there are a lot of similarities between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere and masculine versus feminine energy.
It at least lets my ego take a break because when I hear masculine and feminine energy, I'm like, oh, I'm masculine energy.
Yeah.
But if it's left brain, right brain, then it's a little easier to digest.
I understand. Yeah. And that's a good point. I think making it practical and making it tangible for every individual is really important. It's all about us finding our unique way of plugging in to what that looks like for us.
Yeah, let's make this super tangible. I think like you just gave a really great overview of the characteristics, right? So I like to learn through extremes. Let's take an extreme masculine dude and let's like create this guy, right? So we're saying a man who's completely masculine would be, we talk about structure. You said structure is one of the elements. Let's picture this guy wakes up every single day at 5:30 a.m. without fail. Like there's no compromise. He has to be up at 5:30. And then he has a very regimented morning routine. Every minute is scheduled. He eats the same exact meal every single day. He goes to work and drives the same route every single day, right? Like sits down at his desk and he has the same process every single day of going through his emails before regimented. And then on Saturdays are the days that he goes fishing. Like that's the day he goes fishing and nothing else is going to happen on those days other than fishing. And when it comes to like working through problems, everything is very logical. Everything is very rational. It's done with the mind. He doesn't consult his heart or his emotions, probably sees emotions or heart things as nuisances, as distractions to the real problem that needs to be solved. Am I on point when I'm talking about like someone who's hyper masculine in their energetic sense? And like, how else could you like dimensionalize this guy?
How else could we expand upon what this masculine person looks like? So you bring up a good point about being in the mind, and the feminine is more about being in the body. Like you said, like, how does it feel? Like, how does this feel in my gut? That's the intuitive part of it, is that there isn't necessarily an explanation for why you feel the way you feel or how you know what you know. You can't necessarily pinpoint and connect the dots in a linear way. That's another thing that masculine energy is. It's very linear, like bullet point A leads to B leads to C. Whereas the feminine is more circular. It's more like the dots don't have to line up. They don't even have to make logical sense. You just kind of know what you know without knowing how you know it, and being willing to trust that. And masculine is also very functional. Feminine includes beauty, right? So the masculine doesn't necessarily care about beauty or ambiance or atmosphere. The masculine is more like, okay, does it work? Does it get the job done? Kind of thing. So aesthetics doesn't really matter the way it would come forward with the feminine energy.
That reminds me of jeans that have button fly. Like when it comes to wearing jeans, like I love jeans that are functional because I can zip up, zip down, like I'm in them out of the bathroom. And then the jeans that had like button fly have an aesthetic to it. Like there's something beautiful about the buttons. They piss me the fuck off. Cause like it takes me 12 minutes to go in and out of the bathroom every single time. So there's like this masculine part of me that's just like, does this thing work? But there's not necessarily a lot of color. There's not necessarily a lot of beauty if we only look for what's functional versus beautiful.
I mean, in that case, Dominic, why don't you just wear a loincloth? That's very functional. It's very fast. Like if we're going to do extremes, let's go there.
Dude, don't give me ideas.
That is extreme.
Do not give me ideas. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's do an extreme example of a woman who's like totally in her feminine.
Absolutely. So a woman who's totally in her feminine, I think we could just, honestly, the extreme version of that would kind of be like going outside, being in the grass, barefoot. It's like moon rituals. It's like the whole of, I'm just going to allow the universe to guide me. And, you know, I'm just going to attract things to me without me having to actually take the action to meet certain results kind of thing. The feminine is also doesn't want to be restricted by anything. So like rules, routine, structure, that's very repellent. The feminine wants to be wild and free. That's kind of like that untamed energy kind of thing.
Right. And to that point, would it also be kind of, I'm going to just be in my emotions and my emotions are just going to be unrestrained. So I'm going to be blown around by my emotions. And I think we talked about one of the nature analogies to understand masculine and feminine is with masculine being structure. If you think about a riverbed, like a riverbed on its own is the masculine structure in nature. But without water flowing through it, a riverbed, an empty riverbed is depressing. Right? Because there's no energy. It's just structure. The river, the water flowing through it is feminine energy. It's moving. It's spontaneous. It can change directions. But if there's water and no riverbed, then you have a flood. Then you have typhoons. Then you have chaos and destruction. So like something that's completely feminine without any structure on it also can be destructive, chaotic. Nothing gets done. It's not decisive.
Exactly. And to the point I made earlier about how the masculine is concerned with logic, if we solely rely on intuition, that doesn't really work either because the rest of the world doesn't work that way. I can't just say, I don't feel like it. Or, you know, my gut is telling me I shouldn't do that. Well, that's not always applicable. That doesn't always work in the real world. So we need both, you know.
As you guys were describing the extreme masculine and the extreme feminine, I started to look internally and say which ones feel aligned to me. And the structure feels like that guy's going to be efficient. He's getting stuff done. He's moving things forward and also wildly boring and probably rigid.
Yeah.
And then on the feminine side, I'm like, wow, like I like being barefoot in the grass and running around and feeling intuitive. It feels really fast and that's great. And so like, this is well and good for a conversation. Like what makes this matter in terms of like what makes it matter for me to understand this consciously?
What makes it important is that, like you said, it's kind of like, just to give an example, we have a rainbow, right? The rainbow is composed of all of these colors. If some of the colors are missing, the rainbow isn't as beautiful. It's not a rainbow anymore. It's kind of like that. If you have certain characteristics that are missing, either from the feminine or from the masculine, you kind of get like a shell of a person. You know, either they're super bland, boring, rigid, or they're so wild and colorful that there's like, it's not grounded in actual reality at all. So it's important to have both because when we have both, that's ultimately when we feel our best.
Something Dominic and I talk a lot about is the man box and how guys have been taught through culture, through individual teachings, that we have to live in this box and we can't feel our emotions. We can't, God forbid if we're gay, right? Like there's all these things we're supposed to live in.
Right.
And for me, hearing you talk about the masculine and the feminine and how they integrate together makes me think, okay, great. Like this is my out because these other feelings, these other emotions are okay that are outside this cultural man box.
Yeah, Brian, one of the things that John Wineland had taught me about the masculine and feminine energy. So John Wineland is one of our guests on the show here. He's a deep practitioner of relationship and spiritual intimacy. I did over a year's worth of work with him. And one of the key things to understand about masculine and feminine energies is it's a spectrum. We all have masculine and feminine energies inside of us. It just so happens that most men lean towards the masculine energetic side of things. Not all men. Some men identify with much more feminine energies as the dominant energy source. Most women, or women who people identify as women, are on the feminine side of the energy thing, right? Most, not all. And so at different points in time, like we tap into these feelings and these emotions on the scale. And I think to answer your question, Bri, about like, how does this become practical? You know, if you think about the men that come to us to do work, these are typically guys, 30s, 40s, and 50s who have achieved some level of success in their life. And they've done so in a very masculine way. Set goals, crush goals, make a plan that's linear, like Keisha mentioned, and you knock them down, you rinse and repeat, and you go after what you think is logical, that makes sense. You'd make the right decision, the safe decisions, et cetera. And like, these guys accumulate all these wins and riches and then wake up one day and be like, why doesn't this feel any good? How come this doesn't feel good? And so these guys start to go and seek pleasures through cheating on their spouses or through pornography or through eating or gambling or drugs, right? Seeking that feeling, right? That is typically in the feminine, but we don't know how to do it, especially because what you said, Brad, like the man box tells us to even feel those things would cause us to lose our man card.
Keisha, what is the feminine version of that? So Dominic, you gave a great description of the guys, some of the guys that we work with that wake up one day and they say, well, I just did a bunch of stuff and I feel like crap. What's the feminine version of that?
I think the feminine version of that is maybe like drowning in your emotions. You know what I mean? Like the feminine box is like, you're supposed to be the nurturer. You're supposed to be emotional. You're supposed to be the caretaker. You're supposed to do all of these things. And so women who might be more on the masculine side in terms of like their ambition can sometimes be criticized as well. Because you can't do this and you can't present this way because it's not ladylike. Or even like Dominic talked about how this podcast is in the explicit category because we can curse. Like women aren't supposed to curse. That's not ladylike. So I think being in that feminine box can feel like you're up against like that glass ceiling that we hear about where it's like you can be ambitious, but you can't be too ambitious. You can be intelligent, but you can't be too intelligent because then you start to kind of drift into like masculine territory. So that can feel very restrictive too.
Hey, Keisha, we were joking about this when we did our pre-call, which was, and sometimes there's like an inability to be decisive when you're too far in the feminine. And it's kind of like,
right.
You know what? I'm just going to feel into this for the next 3 days, right? And like not make a decision. And it could become another form of resistance, right? Like I don't want to take action. I don't want to do, or Bri, this is a big one, starting lots of things and not finishing them. Like lack of follow through because it's like, you know what? On day number 3 of like starting a new thing, it's kind of like, it doesn't feel aligned anymore. Or like, like this feels out of alignment and then like letting it go, which is really actually just like resistance coming up and then not wanting to follow through. So yeah, when you're in these extreme versions, Keisha, like it sounds like there's almost like mirror images, just on the extreme ends of how we show up in those extreme polarities.
It's helpful to have this language, like just understanding what the definitions of these are and that we have access to them. I know we've had a guy on our podcast a few times now, John O'Connor, and he was Dominic's coach for 3 years. He's been my coach for about a year. And the reason that I went to John is because I said there's been a few times in my life where I've made decisions, very logical decisions that I was easily able to talk myself into, but I knew there was something that told me that this is not a good idea. And when I made those decisions, there was a lot of collateral damage. And so when I went to John, the words I used at the time, because we didn't do this podcast beforehand, was, hey, I've been making some bad decisions. I don't know why. I think I need to trust my intuition more. And so what it sounds like I've been actually working with John on is, how do I start to trust my feminine energy more?
Yes, exactly. How do you trust the parts of you that you can't logically explain?
Right. It's very hard to put the feminine energy into an Excel document. Very difficult.
Doesn't work at all. Yeah, absolutely.
We've tried.
Another thing I really wanted to touch on, because this is an important distinction as well. So the feminine is also concerned with community. Masculine is more individual. And that's a really important distinction.
Yeah, say more about that, please.
Yeah. So women, or the feminine, I don't want to say women, feminine energy is about building relationships, building community, gathering together, collaborating with one another, taking care of one another. Whereas the masculine is I can do this. I don't really need anybody else. I don't need any help kind of thing. And the masculine can derive a sense of pride from not needing anyone else to get things done. But of course, if we're in isolation and we're not connecting with other people, where does that leave us? Isolated, also cut off from our emotions because we're not connecting and being vulnerable with other people. So I just wanted to put that out there because that's a huge component.
This is making so much more sense now. We recorded a podcast recently on friendships and how guys, especially as we get older, we tend to get more and more isolated to sometimes where it's just ourselves.
Right. Exactly.
And part of that is like, well, why aren't the women in our lives like that? They have all kinds of friends that they surround themselves with. And so this makes so much sense because unknowingly, we'll just go down this path of whatever energy we have, which can lead to a pretty sad place. So it's helpful knowing that.
It's so sad. And just to give like a practical example, we see a lot in marriages or relationships. It is typically the woman or the more feminine aspect of the relationship that nurtures all the relationships for the couple, right? So then when a couple splits up or they get divorced or one of the parties dies, then the man will be left usually isolated, which is why it's typically a lot harder for men to recover from breakups and divorces is because they lose all of their relationships as well, because it was the woman that was maintaining the relationships usually.
Fascinating. I had not heard that before. That's fascinating. Yeah. Okay. Let's dive into some more of these specific examples, Keisha. Let's take the workplace setting, right? Like you are working with a lot of women entrepreneurs who are actually deep in their feminine. Well, actually, it sounds like kind of two categories. You get people who are like deep in their feminine and almost like in an unconscious way, like, can't make a decision, maybe are too caught up in emotions. And then there are other women who are like way too much in their masculine. They're in that do, and then are burning out and exhausting themselves. So what's interesting is like, you are now playing the role of the healthy embodied, both masculine and feminine energies and guiding them to higher ground. So like if you were coaching some of our men who are leaders in their businesses, right? Who have both men and women in their hyper masculine, hyper feminine energies. What are examples from your coaching that you could use to educate them on how to show up as a better leader using this awareness around the masculine and feminine energies and how it may show up in the workplace?
Yeah, I think it shows up very strongly in communication style, right? It's like often it's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it. I think that applies with the masculine versus feminine. If we're talking in the workplace and we're using a masculine kind of style of communication, it's very straightforward. It doesn't take into account how anyone feels about anything, right? So it can be very cold. Whereas with the feminine does care about emotions. The feminine is looking for like the nuances. It's not just about black and white. It's more about like the total picture. That's part of it. The feminine would also be more concerned with balance in the workplace. So how do we make the workplace environment feel more comfortable? How do we make the workplace environment more warm? How do we make the workplace environment more aesthetically pleasing? So it's not just cold, functional fluorescent lights and like desk chairs and that kind of thing. So I feel like the feminine is about like brightening up and warming up the workplace. And the masculine is more like, what do we need to get done? How do we do this the most efficiently? Let me communicate to you in the most straightforward, maybe sometimes cold way, because I only care about this objective.
I could totally see that. Yeah, Bri, one of the things that we've seen in our work in corporates, in any kind of business setting, is especially in the masculine sense, it's like the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So let's just get there. But then when it comes to interpersonal dynamics and someone has an emotional feeling, maybe they got passed over for a promotion, or maybe there's like an interpersonal conflict on the team. Like I know that masculine men struggle because it's an energy drain to deal in the emotional space. So most guys are just trying to solve it, or snuff it out, or like make it go away. And one of the things that we learned again in John Wineland's program is like how to build your capacity to navigate emotions, to welcome those emotions, to not snuff them out, to evoke them, to see what's there and to see them and to honor them. Actually, John Wineland says this: almost every complaint from the feminine energetic perspective, whether it's being expressed by a woman or a man, almost every complaint from the feminine can be drawn back to not being seen, heard, or understood.
100%. To your point, and this kind of goes back to the communication style thing, it's like if I'm in my feminine and I'm coming to you with an issue or something that I want to talk about and I'm just trying to express myself, that's another thing that's feminine, expression, right? I'm trying to express myself. I don't necessarily need the masculine energy to come and try to fix my problem or, to be so logical and rational. I just want you to listen. Just hear me and see me and validate my emotions versus, okay, let's just kind of get through this as quickly as possible because feelings make me uncomfortable. And how can we solve this problem? So absolutely, not feeling seen, not feeling heard is huge.
I've got a real story about this from my time at Prudential when I spent 15 years in corporate there. One of my best years I felt was when I got promoted mid-year. It was a mid-year promotion from an individual contributor role to a leadership role, where I got like 5 teams assigned to me, 42 people. I ended up building like a future sales director program. I inherited a sales team also midway through the year because one of our sales leaders left. It was my first time ever leading people. And universally across the board, people were like, dude, you did a hell of a job this year, stabilizing the ship, building something, making sure like our top people stayed with you. But the sales results weren't where they should have been, right? The sales results ended up at like 70% of plan, but most of the year had already been completed by the time I took over the team. And my manager at the time, who had become like a manager, he was a McKinsey consultant who had never worked in the corporate environment except for like consulting. He came over, became my manager, and he saw the sales results and he gave me an average rating. That was it. Like he didn't look at any of the other work that I did. He gave me an average rating. My bonus was the lowest it had ever been. And when I went to ask him, like, why did I get such a low rating? He just looked at the sales results. And I was like, yeah, but do you realize I inherited basically like 80% of the year sales results were already done. Look at all these other things I did. He was like, I'm sorry, this is the most important thing is the sales results. And he wouldn't hear anything else. He wouldn't see anything else. And he talked over me in the meeting that took me 4 weeks to schedule because he was so busy, right? Like all of that. And my feminine was pissed. I lost total respect for him and trust. I never looked at him the same way. And of course, he thought bygones were bygones. But for the rest of the time that I was there, I had a chip on my shoulder. Like I could never trust him from that point forward.
Mm-hmm. I love that you use the word trust. Because that is like when you don't feel seen and heard, it does violate your trust. And that if it's not repaired, like you said, it can continue. So absolutely.
What do you see in the corporate space? Is it it seems to me, at least in the experience I have, it's a very masculine place.
Corporate world is so masculine. And that's why there are such high rates of burnout, dissatisfaction. And even the corporate environment aesthetically, it's very like usually drab. It's like cold, hard. There's nothing beautiful or welcoming about a corporate office.
Does the system demand that? If I put my CEO hat on, and I'm like, we've got deadlines, we've got things to hit. If we don't, then I'm going to get fired. And so I can see how it'd be very easy to slip into that masculine. And I wonder, what are the leaders missing out there? What could they gain from tapping into their feminine energies?
Yeah, I think that leaders think that like when we talk about things that would actually brighten up and warm up the corporate office, they see them as like distractions or they see them as being non-essential things, not realizing that how you feel in a particular space actually affects your productivity. If you feel good in the environment that you're in, you're going to actually be more productive. You're going to want to do more and you're going to be in a better mood. So they think that they're actually eliminating distractions, but what they're really doing is increasing the dissatisfaction that their employees feel, and then productivity goes down. And not only that, when we don't feel good, it has a physical impact on us as well. If I'm not happy in my workplace environment, that's going to cause me to be more stressed. If I'm more stressed, I'm going to get sick. If I get sick, I'm less productive. Either way you look at it, it's defeating the purpose.
I remember taking a personality assessment once and it asked me the question, what's the most important thing in the world? Is it science or beauty? I said, like obviously science, because that's what pushes us forward. And that's how we get better and do more. And then as I went down the line, the question was posed like, for what? Like for what do you want to progress and live? Because without beauty, like what is the purpose of what we're doing here? That popped up in my head as you're describing this environment in which we want to live and work. Like, what's the point to it anyway? So I could see why bringing that in would make things, of course, more productive, but also like, what are we doing while we're here?
Right. And how are we feeling while we're doing it?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what's the point?
Yeah. And what we're saying here is we're not saying that masculine is worse than feminine or feminine is worse than we're not saying either one of those things. It's like there's an understanding of appreciating both and where one is called for over the other. And I think that example, Brian, was great is, like science is masculine. And when you talk about beauty, that's feminine. When you talk about manufacturing, probably more masculine. When you talk about art, more feminine. I think one of the things that would be really interesting for us is, taking a real life example of one of the women who's come to you, whether she was in a state of burnout or indecisiveness, like tell us a story about someone who came to you and like what you saw and then what you needed to do, leveraging this tool, this awareness around masculine and feminine, how you were able to coach her to a higher ground.
Yeah. So one client that's coming to mind, she was completely disconnected from her emotions. She didn't even enjoy her work anymore. This client actually happened to be in real estate. So she had gotten used to being in a very masculine way of doing things and kind of looking at the world. So completely disconnected from her emotions, completely disconnected from her sense of pleasure. No beauty in her life, no fun, no play in her life, no spontaneity in her life. So it created this very boring person, essentially. So working with her was helping her to connect with her sense of pleasure again, helping her to connect with her sense of joy, helping her to build relationships in her life that weren't just about work, that were actually about having fun and just enjoying things without having to be so focused about meeting a goal or an objective. It was funny too, because when I asked her a lot of these questions, like, okay, well, what do you like to do for fun? She couldn't tell me. Right? Because it had been so long since she had even had fun. So it was really like getting back to the foundation of that. Like, what does that look like? What makes you feel good? What makes you feel good in terms of how you're dressing? Even that.
Keisha, that's so wild because I think back to being a kid, or I just look at kids out there playing. Like, they don't need a roadmap or a coach to help them learn to build relationships, to have fun. But it's so wild to think that as adults, we might need that. Like, we might need someone that can be like, hey, you're doing great on crushing it, but here's how to bring joy and spontaneity and relationships and color into your life. Like, what? When do we lose that?
Right? And it's so funny. It's like we don't realize that we've lost it until we hit a wall. We're disconnected from our bodies, so we're like living from the neck up. And it's not until we hit a wall where we're bored or burned out that we look around and we realize, oh, wait, something's wrong. How did I even get here? Kind of thing,
Yeah. Last year, I did some deep work coaching women in male-dominated businesses. And these were some very successful women in their 40s and 50s who had built 20, 30-year careers in financial services. They were at the top of their profession. And one of the women is one of like Forbes' top 10 women wealth advisors in the state of Arizona. Others have won awards for being the top financial advisor in the industry. So these were like really powerful, successful women who had made it to the top in male-dominated businesses. And I did a 3-day retreat for them, a group of like 8 of them in September here in New York City to connect to designing the future they couldn't wait to live into. And one of the key themes that they expressed, but many of the women in the industry also expressed, is that success came at a price. They were exhausted in playing a man's game, like playing consistently in the masculine energy of things. They were good at it. They were actually great. They were exceptional at it, at the expense of the color in their lives. Like you could even see it in the clothes they wore, right? Like you were talking about this, Keisha, like everything was navy and charcoal. You could see that there was like a fatigue in their eyes, and they'd lost community. Like you were talking about, like they'd gone to this individual contributor thing and they'd lost connection to their sisters, and then coming together for a 3-day period and like letting the guard down, showing emotions that are not welcome in a male-dominated environment, and like being able to actually be seen and heard in the frustrations and the commonalities. There were tears, there were bonds that were created. And now that I've had a chance to witness their journey over these last 9 months, like they've kept in touch. They do these monthly calls without me, it's like women only. And I love that. The stories that they share, the vacations that they take, the outfits that they've bought, the self-care protocols that they wouldn't allow them. So there's one woman in the group. This is great. Her name is Jean Duffy. I have her permission to tell the story because I did a podcast with her. She had never gotten like a massage before. And after the 3-day retreat where I talked about like, hey, don't get back on the plane and start doing work, like take some self-care. She goes to the airport and you know those massage things at the airport, like Spa Bell or whatever? She's like, I'd never gotten one. But not only did I go in there, I got myself a double. And
yes.
even that, like having the permission to actually be feminine in that moment was so healing for her. And Bri, like these are the kinds of ways, like practical ways that men in masculine positions can even like encourage not just ourselves, but like those that we are, you know, that are on our teams or in our families to be like, hey, maybe you could use a little bit of self-care and like hang on to the guilt because there should be none and some big things can happen.
It sounds like it opens up possibility. It opens up a new possibility for enjoyment, for fulfillment. Because I could see that woman for 20 years in her career walking into the same airports and never even seeing that spa because she either went straight to the seat to put her laptop on or she went to the bar or whatever. And now for the first time, she said, oh, that's a possibility. Let's go check that out. That's fun. That sounds like an exciting life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. You both spoke to something that stood out to me, giving yourself permission and then the opening up of new possibilities. I feel like the feminine energy is the magic of life. It's like what makes life magical and beautiful.
Yes. Actually, Bri, Andrew and Jamie, like two of our good friends, right? Andrew and Jamie got married last year. And Andrew is the epitome of like the spreadsheet guy. He tries to spreadsheet everything that he possibly can. And in their wedding vows, Jamie made a joke about his spreadsheets, but then Andrew said in his wedding vow to Jamie, you make my life more colorful. Jamie is an artist. Like she's a beautiful artist. I'm wearing the beads around my wrist and Brian's got some too. And so like when we can recognize that about each other, right? Like Andrew's the doer. He provides the structure. Jamie provides a lot of the color and the spontaneity. That's where magnetism can happen inside of relationships, right? As well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, up to this point, for the most part, we've been talking about the internal dynamics of the masculine and feminine, but now what you're bringing in is like, how do we interact with others? Like, isn't that wild? Like, I have a very masculine question. When you look at yourself, is there a percentage that you ascribe to like, this is my feminine energy and this is my masculine energy? Or is it something that flows more?
Yeah, well, I definitely used to be very much in my masculine, which is how I burned out as a therapist. So back then, I would probably have said I was at a 70-30 maybe, probably even less than that, to be honest, probably less than that. And now it's more in the middle, but of course, there are definitely times where I need to lean on one more than the other, right? I need to get into my masculine if I have like a deadline, I know I have to get things done, I need more organization, that kind of thing. And there are times where I'm just completely in my feminine. I just want to be taken care of. I just want to be pampered. I just want to be with my girls. I just want to do, all of these things. I like to listen to my body to let me know when I need to be more in my feminine. And then like the outside world kind of reflects back to me when I need to be more in my masculine.
That's really deep. So it's not a achievement of, okay, now I'm at this percentage and this percentage. It's a calling out. You've developed enough where you can now call on when I need to be in my feminine, when I need to be in my masculine. It's not a stuck point.
If it were a stuck point, you'd be too masculine. You'd be too rigid. Being in your feminine allows that flow.
It allows that flow. And it's like, and again, that's what keeps life interesting. I don't want to be so on top of okay, I'm going to be masculine now. I'm going to go to the gym and whatever, do all the things. Part of the feminine is going with the flow of life and allowing what needs to come forth without judging it or without trying to control it too much.
How do you and your fiance talk about this? Or how does it come up in your relationship?
Great question. And I think your listeners would appreciate this too, since they tend to be more like masculine men. So when we first started dating and I was more in my masculine, it actually caused some issues in the relationship because I wouldn't let him lead. So I was so used to being in my masculine, I felt like I needed to make decisions and I needed to be in control, and that just doesn't work very well. It doesn't allow the masculine or the man in the relationship to feel like the provider and the protector, right? And so I had to learn to allow myself to relax into my feminine. And when I did that, which was a work in progress, let me tell you, because I had a lot of conditioning that kept me in my masculine. But when I was able to get into my feminine and allow him to be in the masculine, it felt so much better. And then I realized that I was actually fighting myself. by resisting my feminine. And I was making my life a lot more difficult. I was causing issues in my relationship that didn't need to be there. And now that I am able to be connected to my feminine, I can see in real time how that allows our relationship to just go so much more smoothly. And it's just like things are so much better now than they did when I just was insisting on, okay, I'm going to control it and make the decisions. And it's just like, I wasn't even happy doing that, you know?
Yeah. And so masculine energy, the way that I've learned it from John Wineland, masculine is the master of time and space. Masculine is the one that leads, right, in that respect. And oftentimes in relationships, if we're talking about heterosexual relationships, the man oftentimes wants to say, hey, tonight we're going here and we're doing it at this time. And when the feminine is unable to receive that, like you were talking about before, receptivity, receiving is a key characteristic of feminine, then that man feels like his offerings are being rejected. That's what can cause a lot of the tension. But also if a man is not fully conscious in his masculine, if she can't trust his direction because he picks a restaurant that he should know better, like she doesn't like Indian food, but they're going to get Indian food, or, you know, he doesn't get the reservation and now you have to wait 45 minutes and, like, you know, she's hungry. She will doubt your masculine leadership if she can't feel trusting and safe. I've found that, like, when a woman can trust my masculine guidance, my masculine direction, then she can relax because she can stop making those masculine decisions. And then what comes up in its place is like her feminine gifts of spontaneity, of creativity, of intuition. She feels safe to be able to go that. And then I get energy from that. So yeah, you can see how this stuff like works together beautifully if we all know what the hell we're talking about.
I love that example. That was such a perfect example. It's it. And again, you mentioned that word trust. If the feminine can't trust the masculine to lead, then the masculine's going to come out of the feminine and try to take over that position. So it does work together.
Okay. Well, Keisha, this has been an amazing conversation and we're bumping up on time here. So if there's any one last piece of advice that you would give our listeners, if they wanted to say, now that they've been inspired by this conversation, now they want to go do something with this. What's the next right step that they can take to further their education or put this into practice?
Yeah. So part of being in the feminine is being comfortable with being still, just being versus doing. So I would say creating space to not have to always be doing something all the time. And when we create that space, that's when we allow new ideas to come forward. That's when we allow the ability to be more creative instead of always having to be so functional, because we actually have the space for it. I feel like the feminine is about creating space versus feeling like you always have to fill it up with doing things and accomplishing things. So that's part of it. Things that maybe some of your audience members are already doing, but not realizing that it's feminine in nature because they're making it masculine, like journaling, for example. Journaling is actually a very feminine practice, but men can sometimes be very masculine about it. You're not connecting with your emotions, but you're journaling about your day. You're leaving out the emotional part of it, right? So
Guilty.
Even that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been in the past. Yeah. Guilty.
Right?
Yeah.
So connecting with your emotions as you're journaling, and also allowing yourself to be moved by things. Men are conditioned not to connect with your emotions. And so you can get to a place where it's difficult for you to cry, right? Maybe some men can't even remember the last time they cried. So put yourself in a position where you're surrounded by things that evoke emotion from you. A piece of art, go see a play, listen to a beautiful piece of music, allow yourself to get lost in things.
Watch the New York Jets lose another season before the season began. That evokes a lot of emotion from me. That's worked.
That could get emotional.
Yeah, that has never failed in 41 years of my life on this planet.
Dude, my masculine brain immediately goes to create space and do nothing. I'm like, cool, what are we going to do in that time?
But what are we going to do?
Okay, cool. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So do less.
Yeah.
Do less. Got it.
Don't plan everything.
I know for me, I had a lot of judgment associated with any emotion I might have. Sad was bad.
Yeah.
And therefore, anytime I would feel sad, I'd be like, nope, I can't feel that. And one of the more beautiful practices just in this past year or so is let that feeling in no matter what that is. Just let it in. And if that brings tears, if that brings anything else. But I have to, as someone that is often in my masculine, I have to hack it. I have to tell myself like, wait, like go ahead and feel this. It's okay. And like, that's where I had to start because it just didn't come naturally to me. If I went to a play, went to go see art, I would immediately be judging it and criticizing it. I would make that feminine experience masculine, like what you talked about with journaling.
Yeah.
And so for me, like with my journaling, the first thing I write in the journal is, what am I feeling?
Oh,
like what, like write it down. And I'm like, okay, let me go from there.
Yeah. What am I feeling? Using a feelings wheel. If you're not used to it, if you look at the chart and go, what am I feeling? Oh, there it is. And until you like kind of get used to doing it.
Do you have a good version of that you would share with us?
I do.
I would love to have that because
Sure.
Dominic and I have one that we've used before, but it's like crusty. It looks crusty.
It looks crusty.
I want a nice clean one.
Yeah. You said something that kind of triggered a thought as well. So not judging yourself for feeling what you're feeling and also recognizing that whatever's causing the emotion, like if it's sadness or anger, that's inside of your body anyway. Like your body is experiencing that stress response anyway. So not connecting to the emotion does nothing but keep that energy trapped in your body, which causes illness and disease because you're not releasing. You need to be able to feel the emotion in order to release it. So you're better off at least giving yourself permission to feel it just from a physical health perspective as well.
Keisha, we actually have a lot of women listeners of our show and also men who have women in their lives who are entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs. And if they've been blown away by what they've heard from you and either there's someone who wants to hire you or someone who knows someone, like the masculine partner can turn to a woman. What are the best ways for them to get in touch with you? I know your Instagram account has a link tree in your link that has like access to your podcast. It has access to your website, all your challenges. But why don't you share more about like the best ways that folks can reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. I love Instagram. That's probably the platform that I'm on the most. So if someone like sends me a DM on Instagram, even that's a great way to get in touch with me. Sending me an email, which you can do via my website, which you can find on my Instagram. It's just KeishaDelvaCreative.com.
I'll link that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I did want to know, I am open to working with men. I primarily work with women, but I'm more than open to working with men, especially if it's men who are seeking that harmony within and want to add more color, more play, more pleasure, more spontaneity. It can be so helpful for a man to work with a woman and really get that feminine perspective in real time and learn how to bring that forward from within themselves. Yeah, so I do one-on-one work. I do group programs as well. I do individual sessions. So there's a variety of ways to work with me.
Beautiful. What I'm going to do is link your Instagram account in the show notes so someone can go right there because I do think that's like the portal through which they can see all the rest of your work. And your podcast is one of those links. What is your podcast? And if you can just give a quick overview of that in case anyone wants to go seek that right now.
So my podcast is called the Soul Purpose Podcast, which is about like shining in your soul purpose. And I talk, again, since I primarily work with entrepreneurs, I talk about it from a business perspective. So I just talk about things that are going to be normal, that normally come up throughout the entrepreneurial journey. And I focus on helping women to feel empowered as entrepreneurs. But then also I speak to the feminine component of that as well. It's like, yes, be successful as an entrepreneur, but also don't leave your pleasure out of that process. So I kind of do a little bit of everything. I also speak to what's happening in the world because I think it's important for us to do that as well.
Absolutely. Well, Keisha, thank you so much. Brian, do you feel like you've got a baseline understanding of the masculine and feminine energies so far?
Yeah, I'm going to go work on my feminine right after this by doing nothing.
Yes, get into alignment.
Hey, Brian and I wanted to thank you for the ratings and reviews that you leave us. We read every single one of them, and they're so helpful in helping us to understand what resonates with you and helps us determine which topics that we use in the future. So if you found this episode to be of particular value to you, will you please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts so that we know that this is the kind of topic you want to hear more about? And it also helps other prospective listeners to figure out where they can dive in first. Thank you.